Hi everyone, I am Pronojit and welcome to another episode of Deep Tech Musings podcast. For those listening to this on Spotify, Apple or other platforms, we are hosting this on Mensa app, which is a unique take on social audio conversations. So do check it out on the App Store. I'm glad that we have Anurag, founder of Mensa, with us also today. Just joining in. Anurag, welcome. How are you doing?
Very good, Pronojit. Hi, Chirag. Welcome to Mensa.
And hi, Anurag. It's a great app. I was just playing with it like a couple of hours back. So good work in pulling this together.
Thanks, man. Thanks you.
Great. So I also see quite a few listeners who have joined us live. So thank you for making the time. Do share this channel and invite others who you think will benefit from these discussions. So I'm very excited to be introducing today's guest, Chirag, who is the managing partner at 8X Ventures, a VC firm which focuses especially on deep tech startups. Chirag, welcome again.
Thank you, Pronojit, for taking time for this discussion.
So let's start with a quick overview of 8X Ventures and how does 8X Venture define deep techs to start with?
Absolutely. So we, and as you rightly said, in a nutshell, we look at deep tech startups that are generating sustainable value to industries and or to economies. And then the second part of your question was, how does 8X Ventures define deep tech? So we split technology in three segments: soft tech, deep tech, and lab tech. Soft tech is something, if I have to oversimplify right now, soft tech is something that you and I can sit down and build in probably, let's say, a month. Deep tech is something that if you and I sit down or a couple of engineers sit down, they may be able to get a MVP ready in a couple of months, but then if they are trying to replicate someone, they may have to fight the patent or trademark battles or copyright battles or some of these battles before they can replicate, because typically deep tech is protected by a lot of intellectual property. The third category is the lab tech. Lab tech is something that takes years or decades of research and hard work from generations before you can see things to life. For example, sending someone to moon. So that will be lab tech for us. And coming up with a edtech solution where people can connect with each other is probably a soft tech. Deep tech is anything in between.
Great. That is one of the most quantified definitions that I have heard. So really puts perspectives into place. So I'm curious to learn what made 8X Ventures take a bet on deep tech and enterprise when very few people are doing that right now.
So there are two dimensions of thinking that we had. So we started about 7 months back with 8X Ventures. When we started, the first dimension and the realization was soft tech is an extremely competitive and a crowded marketplace right now for venture capital firms. So if you're building anything for consumer tech, ed tech, fintech, more often than not, there are too much dry powder available in the market. And if you think about the impact that these venture capital firms have on the industry, they bully the smaller players, because more often than not, your differentiation is the marketing dollars or basically the total amount of operational expenses that you can sustain and how long you can stay a loss-making business. Technology is very rarely a moat for a soft tech. So it's a very, very, very crowded space. People are bullying, venture capital firms are bullying by letting their startups go very, very loss-making so that they can push away all the potential competition. However, the realization was, when you look at deep tech space, because technology is your moat, throwing extra money may not necessarily make you a bigger startup or a stronger startup. Case in point, if you think about Theranos, it probably had the most money ever raised by any medtech or a health tech company ever so far. But still, more money does not necessarily mean you can expedite the technology. The deep tech talent is rare, and that is what differentiates them. A smart deep tech talent is more powerful and influential than having probably like $1 million in your bank account. So that was the first conviction that we had. And second was a belief that if you look at the Indian ecosystem or the Asian ecosystem as a whole, it generally replicates the trends from the US, European, and the Chinese market. Until 2015, about less than 10% of the startups funded in the US, European, and in the Chinese market were deep tech. So very, very rarely you will see a deep tech getting funded until 2015 in the US, European, and Chinese market. But now that number is about 25% for these markets. In India, right now, about 7 to 8% of the startups funded are deep tech. Now, it's a matter of time that more money will start flowing in the deep tech. And when more money will start flowing, that will mean the valuations will just go out of control, which is going to happen. We are pretty confident about it. So given that belief that the valuations will go up and a lot of money is about to come to the Indian deep tech ecosystem, we wanted to move first and take some action and make an impact to the society first before anyone else comes on.
Got it. So you mentioned about moats there in between, and competitive differentiation moats is one of the key for any startup. So do you think technology is the only moat that a deep tech startup can develop, or what are the ways that a startup can go about building moats in deep tech industry?
So it's a very, very relevant and a very fair question. So the question is basically, what are the different moats a deep tech can build? So yes, technology is one of the big moat, but operational processing and the operational capability is a very big moat, which is often underrated in the deep tech ecosystem. And let me elaborate on that. If you are building a deep tech company, more often than not, you are probably very, very smart engineer or a scientist or a professor who understands technology inside out. For you, that technology may not be very complicated because you have been looking at it for years, if not decades. When you start scaling the team, your team may not understand or may not have the same passion for the same technology that we're talking about. Then hiring the like-minded people who can understand the technology and have the passion for technology is the operational moat that deep tech founders have to build. And a lot of deep tech companies struggle in doing that. Identifying and building a team and nurturing and structuring them in a way that they can capitalize and keep the innovation ongoing is a very hard job, not just for the startups, but also for the large established company. So if I have to compare deep tech companies, I will of course look at the technology moat, but I will also look at the operational moat or execution moat for that.
Yeah, very well laid out. But don't you think that's sort of difficult in a deep tech space where you're protected by patents and all, but still you need to make it in a way pervasive to a wider audience?
Yes and no. It really depends on which industry, which product we are talking about. Mm-hmm. There are certain deep tech products, and at one point Uber was a deep tech. If you think about it, in 2014, it was a deep tech solution that you will be able to use your phone to track the taxis and the customers and everything. So, and they had to make it pervasive. And eventually, right now, what the impact of that pervasiveness is that there are companies right now that claim they can make a Uber-like app for you for anything that you want to launch. Yeah. So yes, there is always a risk that the intellectual property gets misused, and it has happened like many times, and it is going to happen. But what you cannot match is what differentiates are the companies that are always innovating faster than the competitors. So why Uber managed to stay ahead from a lot of other companies which were equally funded is that Uber were constantly pumping pressure on the tech people to keep innovating, be faster. Right now, the latency on an Uber app is less than 4 seconds, i.e. for any action that you take, or when you press a button or press a key, it will take less than 4 seconds. You might be able to replicate a Uber type app, but achieving that kind of latency of 4 seconds is really tough. And they have stayed ahead of the technology curve. Now, while we're talking about 4 seconds, they might be thinking about 2 seconds or 1 second. I don't know what they're thinking about, but staying ahead of the technology curve then protects all these deep tech companies while they get pervasive.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So what would your advice be to start entrepreneurs who are looking to enter into the deep tech space? What are, say, the top 3 things they should watch out for to take their startup from 0 to 1?
When I think about it, there are 3 things, and let me rephrase it. Why do the deep tech companies fail? The deep tech companies fail for 3 reasons. First, the trust on amongst the co-founders. Trust in terms of skill set, in terms of capability, in terms of passion, in terms of interest. More often than not, deep tech is a marathon and not a sprint. And if you don't have a strong bonding and trust amongst the co-founders, it is going to fall apart. You are married for a long time, so prepare for that. Second is that technology and execution mode that we talked about. You must always build a technology and execution mode, and you should always stay ahead of the curve from every potential competition, or at least aim to be ahead of, and not just like a minor ahead. You should aim to be like a 10x better than every technology and every execution mode that your competitors are doing. And third is vision of the founders. Can the startup founders, if you are in a deep tech space, can you visualize how the industry will look like in future because of you? How you're going to change the industry? Airbnb changed the industry. Uber changed the industry. Can you visualize the industry 5 years from now? Very often than not, the third point, which is vision of the industry, is lacking in a lot of founders. They cannot visualize how will the industry look like once they become pervasive. And because they cannot visualize the industry as a whole, they fail to stay ahead of the technology curve, and eventually they break the trust amongst the co-founder in the skill set or the capability to lead, and they stop succeeding and they stop winning. So those are 3 things I would say you have to always keep thinking about if you want to avoid failure and if you want to watch out for when you're going from 0 to 1.
Great points. I echo on the vision aspect very well. Many of the founders who have made it, I think, I've seen that they know who, not even the future customer, they know who's the future investor as well, and they work backwards from there. So that clarity in vision is something which set apart the startup really well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how does 8x Venture assess the tech quality of these deep tech startups? Because they, by very definition, have a longer gestation period. So how do we go about it?
So we look at 3 aspects of it: people, product, and market. People, and as I said, like trusting the skill set, and what are the skill sets? Do you even have, as a co-founders, amongst yourself, the skill set to build the technology that you're talking about? Do you have the skill set to move from proof of principle to proof of concept to proof of value to product market fit? Do you have that skill set? So that is the people part of it. Second part is the product. What is the product that you're building? Is this product already existing in the market? What are the alternatives that exist in the market? Whatever that you're building, will it make people's life 10x better than what it is right now? Is your solution 10x better than when people use it than everything else available right now and in the future? And third is the market. How big is the market we're talking about? Are we solving a problem statement which is for a very small industry, or we are solving a problem statement for a very big industry? And how is that industry moving? Is the industry by itself not going to be the same by the time the product is ready? So 3 things, as I said: people, product, and market is what we look at very carefully to be able to decide, do we want to go ahead and spend our time, money, and energy on that startup or not?
Got it. So I want to double click on the second point you mentioned about making 10x improvements. So how is it evident at a very early stage, from maybe when a startup is doing just a few POCs or something, that it will go on to make a 10x impact? How do you have a mental model of how you judge that?
No, this is a great question, honestly, and it's one of the hardest thing that we have to go through on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Now, let me just try to answer that question, but it may not be the best answer that I could think of. Generally, so there are three stages on a deep tech startup. First is proof of principle, second is proof of concept, and third is proof of value. Once you cross these stages, then comes the product market fit and all the alignment with the business, then growth strategy. But let's talk about these three stages. When you do the proof of principle, you are theoretically trying to prove that actually a better 10x better solution or product is possible or not. Then you do a proof of concept, you build a very basic prototype and see if it actually can be done or not. There are very clear signs at the proof of principle and the proof of concept. Is the startup even thinking about a 10x improvement or not? If we get a sense at the stage of a POP or a POC or a POV that the startup is not even aspiring for a 10x improvement, they are actually aspiring for a 2x or a 3x improvement, then more often than not, we lose the interest. Because if you aspire for a 10x return, there's the 10x improvements, there's a likelihood you might end up with a 3x improvement or a 4x improvement. There is a likelihood that will happen, that you'll not achieve the kind of extent that you were hoping for. But if you aspire for a 2x improvement or a 3x improvement doing a POP, POC, and POV, then more often than not, your competitors are going to catch up pretty soon. They will sooner. It's an incremental improvement. Then it's not an exponential improvement. You have not rethought through the entire value chain. You have not rethought through how you're going to build a different dimension to the competition. So more often than not, if your proof of concept talks about 2x or 3x, you lose interest.
Got it. So lastly, we are close to the time frame as well. So what value does 8x Venture provide to the startups who come onto the board?
So we are a Middle East-based investors. Our investors our LPs are also in the Middle East, and I am personally also based out of Dubai. Now, the most effective value that we provide is that a lot of deep tech ventures that we invest in, they do a great technology, great product while they're in India. However, the market adoption rate and the capability for the customers to pay for a deep tech solution in India tends to be a lot lower, or tends to be in multiples a lot lower than what is the capability for a Middle East customers are. So, for example, if you build a product, we invested in a company called Zyma, and their product is used for oil and gas companies. Now, the price point that they're charging for their customers in India is at least 3x lower than what they can charge in the Middle East. What we do is, in every deep tech startup that we invest in, we work with them to do a global expansion. We connect them to the advisors that we may already have on board, or the venture partners that we have on board, or some of the people or the connections that we have, or some of the LPs that we have who are pretty deep into this ecosystem in this region, because they may be able to get a foot on the door for these guys into the Middle Eastern clients, or in some cases even European and the US clients. And generally, there is no better recognition for an Indian deep tech startup than to get a foot in the door or to actually sell to an international customer. It increases their acceptability in the Indian market as well. So that is the key value add that we focus on.
Great. That is great to know. I think that's one of the best things that a startup can get out of to grow more, not even revenue, but more feedback as well, and from different set of customers and all. So, right. So I go ahead. I think you were mentioning one more point. I interrupted.
So the other thing that we also do is I would not say we are there yet, but we are getting there. There are handful investors only in the deep tech ecosystem in India right now. One of the things that we hold ourselves responsible for is to give visibility to the Indian deep tech ecosystem globally, not just to our portfolio companies, but beyond that as well. So we have been spending with all our heart and soul a lot of time, effort, and energy talking about Indian deep tech ecosystem and how amazing it is everywhere that we go, in the Middle East, in the European ecosystem, and the US ecosystem. And we want a lot of these VCs in the US and the European markets who have way more money than the Indian ecosystem deep tech startup VCs to actually start looking at Indian deep tech as a possible deal flow. And that is going to actually solve a massive, massive problem for the Indian deep tech ecosystem. So that is the second thing that we have been focusing on, but that's not really exclusive to our startups.
Sounds good. Lastly, how can prepared startups reach out to you? What would be the best channel?
The best way is LinkedIn is generally, I love LinkedIn. Even though I am not always on LinkedIn, one or other team member that we have is, and they access my account as well. So if someone reaches out to me on LinkedIn, someone will definitely respond, or at least in most of the cases will respond. If not me, one of my team members will respond on that. The other way is they can drop us an email at pitch@8xventures.co.
Okay.
And every email that we receive, we go through it and we evaluate it with a lot of caution and with a lot of love.
Sounds good. All right. So
Chirag,
last couple of it, Anurag, you have something?
I just had a quick question, Chirag. So, one, I don't understand exactly how the line is drawn on deep tech, right? But there is this open AI kind of deep tech, right, which is at one end. And then there is, consumer tech kind of work, right? So where does the line of deep tech get drawn and saying, right, so unless it's using, say, for instance, AI is not deep tech, is that how those definitions work?
So everyone defines it differently. So let me, and I started with this definition, let me just go back to my definition. And I'm oversimplifying this for the sake of conversation. If you and I can sit down and replicate what someone else is doing or what a startup is doing in a month or 2 months, I don't qualify that as deep tech. So for example, if someone asks me to build an app where they can buy, let's say, clothes, and it's almost like a online shop front for someone, I know I can sit down with a few smart people and we can code together and that we can get that app ready and out in 2 months. It may not be the best solution, but it will work. So that, and a lot of, I'm using an app as an example, but there are a lot of other solutions like that. So I will not qualify anything I can do in 2 months together with a bunch of smart guys as a deep tech.
So unless there's a learning angle to it, it doesn't help, right? Because you can get smartness at any point, right? By being lucky.
Yes. Because more often than not, if it's less than 2 months, then it's your differentiation is really the marketing. How much money you have to spend. If I have let's say $10 million, even if it's my app is shitty, I start talking about it everywhere. I will get traction. On the contrary, if I built a deep tech solution, which for anyone to replicate takes, let's say, 2 years, and the founder has spent like 5 years of doing a PhD or a research on that topic before the product came out, and replicating that is the bare minimum, like a year's time.
So your time is just finishing, right? So